Hello and welcome back to another episode of Advanced RC Adventures. A2RC here. This is a channel where we investigate, explore, build and explain, upgrade and advance Nitro RCs to another level. Come start a new adventure with me. Today what you have in front of you is all the makings of an HPI NitroStar 12E. We've got some goodies here like the Pro purple all billet machined head. We've got brand new components. This is a 12E piston and sleeve set, gasket set, connecting rod, piston pin, brand new bearings. A lot of these parts are getting really hard to come by. I've had them now for about a year now, waiting to be built, but it took about 12 to 16 months to find all of the components. Some came from as far as Canada, Italy, Australia, Utah, New York, North Carolina, California, and Kansas, and a number of other places to build this iconic HPI 12 NitroStar. So let's clear off the bench here and start the adventure. So the best place to start is the engine block itself. Notice this looks very similar to the 15FE block, but with a couple differences. The main difference being here on the bottom, it does not have integrated engine mounts. Normally there would be 1, 2, 3, 4 engine mounts coming out the bottom. This does not. This just has the engine mount flanges here on the side. They use the same internal bearings front and rear. We're going to be putting in brand new bearings. We've got some chrome steel to put inside this block. And these engines came out around the mid 1990s, some around 1995, 6, 7. And they were built off of TOKI's pre-existing airplane engine designs. This is an iconic 12E, and I personally have never had a 12E running on one of my builds, and I've always wanted to build one, get it running, and it's going to be pretty special to be able to do this for you guys and for myself on a brand new build of the HPI TOKI Shuwa manufactured 12E. So we have some brand new engine bearings here. These are 10 by 19 by 5. These are still chrome. Both shields are still on the bearing. We're going to take one shield off for the front bearing. We're going to take off both shields for the rear bearing, get out some heat, and install them into the block. So now that we have those shields off, we can take a look at the crank. We're going to use the crank as a form of a bearing installation tool. This is literally the exact same crank as the 15FE. Same induction window, same timing, same shaft size for the bearings, same rod journal. And they're decent little cranks. Just a standard balance lobe here. Nothing crazy, nothing special. Let's go ahead and measure that induction bore. It's like we're just under 7 millimeters, 6.9. And that's a decent size for a 12 size engine for sure. So let's get the heat out and start installing these bearings. Okay, now that she's cooled off a bit, we can take a little look. We've got our bearing down inside, front bearing with the shield still on one side. The milling down inside the block is the same as the 15 FE. These do have that same hidden style boost port. So let's keep going and get her assembled. Lube up the crank. On the side there. We're going to need a couple parts here. We've got the 1710 brass connecting rod. Got the 1709. We got the piston pin for the 12E and the 1708. These always say ABC, but if you take a look, and we'll take out of the package, these are actually nickel plated. These are not ABC, these are ABN, which is what these 12Es and the 15Es normally have. But we're going to take a look at the port sizing, and they're definitely different for this 12E. So we have our wrist pin here with the little Delrin piece that we do not want to lose. So standard kind of style wrist pin. This is a floating wrist pin. It uses this small plastic piece that goes into the end of the wrist pin. And what happens is that plastic piece rubs on the sleeve to help keep the wrist pin in place. And that's why it's called a floating style. So that just pops into the end right there. Let's get this piston and sleeve bag cut open. Take a look. Take a look at the piston real quick. No oil grooves, just a very basic kind of piston. But something interesting to note is that this is actually an all billet piston, where the 15 FE is a cast and then later machine piston. Full skirt all the way around. This does have that bypass port, which is the boost port for the engine. Let's get the connecting rod out here. This is the all brass, very typical 15 FE and 12E connecting rod. Oil drilled hole on the bottom, but there's no oil hole for the top. And that's a little more common than you actually will know. There's actually a number of engines that do not have any type of lubrication hole for that top wrist pin hole, and that's because it doesn't move a whole lot. But there are a number of different engines that do. It's just this particular style and this design does not. So let's put a little lube on our wrist pin. A little lube on the connecting rod, top and bottom. Now, something to note with this particular connecting rod is that there is no front and back. What I mean is that there is a chamfer on both sides of this lower portion of rod. And that means that it can face either direction, the back or the front. So it does not matter which way this particular rod goes inside of the piston. But the piston is important to go into a certain way. that port in the piston for the boost port has to be facing towards the front of the engine. And if you accidentally put it in the wrong way and you can see that port out the exhaust, then you know that you have it installed incorrect. Let's get this piston and rod assembled. Put your pin in the bore, get it lined up inside, put it through the connecting rod, and then you have that piston assembly. Let's put some oil down inside. Move that around a little bit. Let's put a little oil on the piston itself. And let's drop this down inside of the engine block. So when this goes down inside, you want that hole to be facing towards the front. There we go. Let's get our push block out of the way. And let's take a look at this sleeve. Start with our exhaust port here. Pretty basic, just rectangular exhaust port. We have our transfer port here. And something interesting is that these transfer ports are actually beveled here on the side. They're not beveled on the bottom, they're actually beveled on the side. And then the bevel actually continues through in an upward direction for that air fuel mixture to go inside of the combustion area. Same over here on this transfer port, we have our bevel leading this way and up that way. And they're actually decent sized transfer ports, they're just more square-like. And then we have our boost port cut out in the sleeve here. Notice it's a pretty big boost port, but remember the air has to go through the bottom, through that hole in the piston, and then what it does is it doesn't come out. It uses that bevel inside to transfer that air and fuel mixture up into the combustion chamber, and then pushes and boosts that out the exhaust here. So let's compare that to a 15FE sleeve. The exhaust port is a little bit smaller on the 12E. The length of the sleeve is about the same. Take a look at our transfer ports. These are definitely a different size. Transfer port on the 15FE is definitely bigger compared to the 12E. Here's our boost port. The 12E here is definitely a bigger size than on the 15FE. So that's definitely interesting. So here's the 15FE, here's the 12E boost port. And then back to the transfer port here on the side, the 12E is definitely a lot smaller. It's more rectangular here on the 15FE and more square-like on the 12E. So that's just a little bit of comparison for you. Notice the coloring. This is still nickel plated on the 15FE, nickel plated here on the brass sleeve for the 12E. Put a little oil on the outside, on the inside, and let's get this sleeve, brand new sleeve inside of this engine. This does have an indicator port. Generally speaking, goes towards that back side, but really what you're going to try to do is you're going to line up that exhaust port into the exhaust window here, and that's effectively all that you need to do. Slip this down inside the block. Slip that down inside. We're going to rotate that around until I don't know if we can see this on camera, but take a look. You can see the exhaust port, and I'm rotating that until all of the exhaust port is right in the middle of that exhaust window. And there's a little mark in the casting here, which is almost dead center of the back, and that indicator little area needs to be right at or right around that cast line there. But I normally ignore that, and I take a look at the exhaust window to the port, and that's how I line that up. So here's our internals. Look at that, we have some nice pinch pushing up the sleeve. Let's continue on getting this assembled. So because those sleeves just kind of float around, we're going to go ahead and get the head on first. This is the gasket set for the 12E. It's a 1713 part number. Comes with an aluminum head shim and a backplate gasket. The backplate gaskets are the exact same for the 15FE and the 12E, but the shims are a little bit different. Careful we don't cut that gasket. That would not be good after all of this. Let's put that down here. So let's go ahead and measure. The thickness is a 0.5, and the difference doesn't lie in the thickness. The 15FE uses the same thickness, that 0.5 of a mil, but the size, the ID/OD is different, and it's specific for the 12E itself. So the 15FE is going to have a little bit different inner bore for sure, but that thickness is the same at 0.5, and that's relatively big for a 12 and a 15 size engine, but that's what it is from stock. Now we have the billet all purple CNC machined head. Get that cut open and let's take a look. This is one of the prettiest upgrades that you can do to any engine, especially these 12Es that have that cast aluminum low profile head. All HPI purple, some shine cuts here on the side. And I mentioned it in a different video, but you can get a similar style head for the 15FE, but it's important to note that this 12E head and the 15FE head, they look similar, they are not the same. The combustion bowl is different for the 12E, and the amount of fins here are different. So let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 fins on this head, and the 15FE head has 1 more. So here we have the 12E head, and we have a 15FE head here. Notice it's 1 fin taller on the 15FE head, but it's a very, very similar design. They both look beautiful. It's just the 15FE head is slightly taller. This is also the exact same head that comes on the other TOKI built 12 RSS engine. So just so you know, if you bashed up your 12 RSS head and you've happened to find that 1702 part number for this exact head for the 12E, it will fit the 12 RSS head also. So let's put a dab of oil down in here so that it holds our head shim. When you do this, just a little trick, it doesn't fall out of the head. Something extra to note is that this particular head is a multi-flow head. It actually accepts air from not 1, not 2, not 4, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different directions. Essentially, all the way around the head. It doesn't matter which way that you install this head. It accepts airflow from all different directions. Let's make sure our exhaust port didn't move. Let's set that down on top. There we go, we got the brand new head installed onto the block, and she's starting to look pretty beautiful. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this engine buttoned up so we can get her back on the road. So let's go ahead and get the backplate on here. This is your standard or typical backplate for the 12E and 15FE. Semi-interference. We have our internal starter shaft. Let's get a little lubed up, put our gasket on, and install. It's always good to have the actual gasket for these back plates. The hole size and the spacing and the lineup is so particular for these, it's not worth trying to make your own. There are 1 or 2 independent gasket makers that make gaskets that are similar or can be used for these, so take a look out for those. But if you can find originals, that is definitely the way to go. So that little cutout there in the starter shaft, that's going to line up with the little pin down inside for the rod journal there. Let's go ahead and install this. Make sure that the gasket doesn't move, so that when you put in your bolts, everything is lined up nicely. There you go. Starter shaft on there, back plate on. Let's go ahead and get our one-way bearing on. And the iconic Nitro HPI 12E backplate. When wanting to get all the parts for this engine, it actually took me a while to find a decent pull start. Of course, you can't find these new unless you have a brand new engine. So I ended up having to buy a couple donor engines, and one of them still had a nice 12 Nitro Star sticker is what I was really looking for, and having the pull start. The pull starters can be rebuilt, or you can use other parts to make them, but you got to have that nice sticker. There she is, beautiful 12E with the all billet CNC machine, purple head. Let's get that carb on there and finish her up. We have our carb here. This has a 4.6 millimeter bore down inside. That's the same for the 12E and the 15FE. our high-speed needle, put a little lube on your O-ring. This has been completely disassembled and cleaned. Just our high-speed needle needs to go back down inside, and she'll be ready to go. So you spin this all the way down, you lightly find the bottom, and then the initial settings for these carbs are 3 turns out. So there's a little indicator, that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3. These use the flat style butyl O-ring seal down on the bottom. This is a single needle carb. There's no low speed needle here. Idle screw there to adjust the barrel gap down below. And these use 2 bolts into the carb neck to hold it in place onto the engine. Put that down in side here. Line up your bolt holes. Put in your screws. Now what I like to do is get these started. Touch them and then back it out, just so the screw is close. There is the smallest amount of up and down kind of wiggle room for these screws. So once you have it touched, you back it out and use your thumb and you push down to try to seat that seal as best you can. And you just do a little snug on these. There is not a lot of thread engagement. Only about a thread and a half. So you just get those snug. And here we go. We now have a vintage but brand new built HPI TOKI Shuwa manufactured 12E brand new purple billet CNC machine head, brand new bearings for our HPI 12 Nitro Star. What a beautiful iconic engine, and she's ready to hit the races once again. I appreciate you taking this adventure with me, and if you enjoy these types of engine overviews and engine rebuilds, then feel free to like, share, and subscribe. If you like 10 scale, nitro, and especially touring cars, then this is a place to be, and thanks for taking the adventure with me.